Morning, everybody. Michelle is here. Michelle is here on a Tuesday. Okay, so let me see what Tuesday is. What? I don't keep track of too much of it. July the 14th, 2026, on a Tuesday. So I'm up, out and about, handling my business. There's always something to do. Anybody that talk about bored, I just don't understand what that exactly means. I think it has something to do with something going on internally for you to be bored. You know, I remember when when I was a young girl, I used to say I was bored a lot because I guess I was hearing other people say it. But there were so many things to do. I just didn't want to do the things that I was told to do and do the things that needed to be done. That's usually why people are bored, because they're not doing things they want to do. They're doing things that they have to do that needs to be done and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, so I wanted to get back to the pending extinction of the mediocre man and why it's too late to do anything about it. And I know a lot of people are probably raising their eyes and thinking, what the hell is she talking about? Well, the same thing happened to the Neanderthals. I'm pretty sure whoever was the people that were living in that lifespan during that time did not conceptualize that a particular species of human. Maybe the scientists were more curious about this back then, or maybe not, but they were. And the way we are living now, we have the social media platform, which magnifies a lot of fallacies and a lot of deceptions and manipulations. Some people may not have, paid attention to the warning signs. And I can guarantee you that's true, because that's how we're behaving now when it comes to the climate destruction. We're not paying attention to the warning signs. Everything's a hoax. Everything is, it's just a sadness, actually. When I think about so many chances we had, over the course of time, to make things right. But instead we keep having these same type of personalities who are of a criminal negative energy that come to the surface, and they're usually in those religious tentacles I talk so much about. It doesn't matter how many times they're born. Let's make that clear. It doesn't matter how many times they pass the baton. They end up the fresh and clean new personality ends up gravitating towards that same type of energy of the former personality. Okay? Even though they have there's really no only thing that when you pass the baton of the energy that you store, in your conscious. But anyway, so the demise of the mediocre man was in place, I would say, back in the 1700s, when we had an opportunity to do something about it. That's when the population started exploding. The criminal negative energy was exploding as well. The mediocre man became extremely soft, meaning he did not want to necessarily rise to the level of what it means to be a biological man. The mediocre man wants everything to be easy for them, no hard labor. And so that's why they relied on slaves. They relied on domesticated animals. Everything was done to allow the mediocre man to barely lift a finger. Everything was done for them. Even though they were in these so-called colleges and higher levels of education, a lot of that was created by them. It was created to serve them and to allow them to have this so-called elite status without necessarily earning it. So the mediocre man is not, if you don't rise to the level of what you are, as they say, born to be, it's going to dissolve over time. And for the mediocre man who has been operating at an extremely low level of a human being, that's why most of them are infertile now. Most of them are suffering from some type of self-created man-made dementia. They cannot compete. They're weak. They're soft. So eventually, because they're not rising to the level of what it means to be a biological man, they're going to dissolve themselves, make themselves vulnerable. So the Neanderthals, that's what happened to them. Okay, cannibalism. Did you know that? Okay. Other human beings use them as food. The Neanderthals became soft, even though their physique said otherwise. That's why you see these so-called muscle-bound athletes who can barely lift a finger. As weak as, they make them lift 300 pounds, but they can barely take out the trash. So, and they can barely, the one thing that really is adding to the extinction of the mediocre man is he cannot, or will not, I think it's more so will not, protect the biological woman. So, here we are in these days and times, and I'm talking about extinction. And people are probably looking at me thinking, okay, what is she talking about? There is no way human beings go extinct. Well, they do, and they will. And the massive overpopulation is what's leading to it as well. Because we are massively overpopulated all over, and I told you we're energy. Our energies are interfering with the energies of others. We are crowding each other out, and and some people just love the privilege of not having to earn anything. They want to hoard, gluttony, overindulge, perform like the politicians. The politicians, the majority of them are nothing more, nothing less than oratory performers, pretenders. Okay? This, if you can if you can discern properly and do some investigation on Neanderthals, you'll ask yourself, okay, why did these human beings go extinct? There was no reason for it. Well, there was. It was there because of their behaviors and actions, or lack thereof. Okay, they became food for others. Okay, they did not value competition. They, like I said, they had the physique of an athlete, like these musclehead bodybuilders. They're muscleheads. And the MMAs, even though those guys can fight and beat and brutalize each other in that square of where they're performing at, they can barely defend their families if they had to. They can barely defend their neighborhoods if they had to. That's why you have a lot of these mediocre men running from these islands or these countries because, they're scared. Have you ever heard so many biological men talk about how scared they are? And so that they're scared that they're going to get killed and that their lives are, they always feel threatened by something. If they're not threatened by the cartels, they're threatened by the drug dealers, they're threatened by black people. They always talk about how scared they are. Have you ever heard that so much? With the mediocre man talking about how scared they are. I'm so scared. And they wondering why the biological woman is a bit more assertive than she used to be. That's part of her evolution. She knew that if the biological man could not sustain his accountabilities and responsibilities, the biological woman instinctively knew that she had to step in to protect the children and as well protect the planet. as as Mother Earth is. So I know this sounds like a bunch of rambling, and that's fine. It can sound like a bunch of rambling to you. It may not make sense to you, but if you are the discerning type and you really, really, really want to know, okay, what is really going on with our species of humanity? Okay, pay attention to what happened to the Neanderthals. Yes, the circumstances are different. Okay, the stage of their development was different. Their environment was different. But there was no reason for that species of human beings to go extinct. And that ought to be troubling to a lot of the mediocres out there. It's because if you can't perform to your duty as a human being, you will no longer be a human being. You will dissolve. That's what a form of energy does too. Over time it dissolves if it's not used properly, and it dissolves itself into another form of energy. Okay, so I'm gonna keep talking about this. I'm gonna keep putting some flavor in your ear, or whatever you want to call it. Impulses is what I was taught to call it. Impulses of energy, impulses of ideas. It's all energy. We're all energy. Okay, you can't get past that. We're not just human beings, and that's what the mediocre man believes, that we're just human beings. We live and die, live and die, live and die. That's a fallacy. That is not true at all. And you've given many, many opportunities to know that that's not true. We're energy. Energy does not die. Peace and love. Talk to you soon.